Here's a question that has been bugging me for the last few years. How do you actually go about publishing something? Let's say you have a book, a comic book, or an animation, or even a song. How and where do you publish it? What are the steps which take you from the idea to a fully realized and publicly available product for people to buy and engage with? I'm genuinely asking, by the way, because going into this video, I don't really know the answer to that. The purpose of this video is not to be an expert on publishing or putting out creative works. More so, it's meant to share my notes, my struggles, and the things I can't seem to wrap my head around. I have an idea of how you're meant to go about publishing something. You just go on an app, upload your files, and hit publish. It's that easy, like a YouTube video. But what if I want people to purchase the thing that I've made? What if I want to make merch to sell to you guys? How do I go about that? Well, there's a few ways here. Just open up a Patreon, take commissions, make a YouTube channel with memberships, or upload it to something with AdSense like Spotify and Webtoons or whatever else. Easy, but what is the process of that? What do you even do to get to that point in the first place? And how do you even gather an audience? These are the sorts of questions which always linger in my head, and my personal answer has been to develop this YouTube channel as a means of garnering an audience. But then there's the fact that not everyone has the ability to create their own YouTube channel and make it successful. Not everybody has extra money to spend on an editor or extra time to make content. Most people have to prioritize living first, and bills won't pay themselves. And yet, through all of those struggles, people still find a way to capture an audience. That's why I'm happy to use my platform to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Black Swan. And before you click away, I'm here to tell you that this sponsorship is also important to the video for a few reasons. The sponsor of today's video is not a big company, and they've taken a considerable risk to sponsor this video. Black Swan is an independent publisher who approached me specifically to help spread the word about their new comic, Mr.Sasaki Soul. I recommend you check out this comic not only for the story itself, but for what it represents to me for this video. Black Swan is doing something that I personally dream of doing one day: creating a comic which other people can read and enjoy. Black Swan has also gone through all of the difficult steps necessary to make something and put it out into the world, and now all that's left is the attention of an audience. They need early adopters who can help this story grow its audience. So, Black Swan took a risk on me, and I want to make sure our community pays it back in full. So if you believe in supporting independent creators, then check out Mr.Sasaki Soul on Amazon through the link in the description below or in the pinned comment. Anyways, I won't take up too much more of your time. Back to the rest of the video. When we think about traditional publishing for novels, I would bet that most people tend to have either a neutral or a negative opinion of them. They are the gatekeepers, the large, well-established companies with advertising infrastructure and all the means to profit off an author's hard work. Oftentimes, it is these traditional publishing companies for which a writer is reliant upon to make a living off of their creative work. In recent times, however, people haven't been purchasing books like they used to, and the industry of creative writing is slowly shrinking. As less and less people read books, it becomes increasingly difficult for these companies to stay afloat. At least that was my assumption, but that's kinda not the case, at least when it comes to book sales per capita. We've actually seen a general growth in book sales recently. Now, I can't really find much data when it comes to book sales for the decades before the 2000s. My intuition says that we must have bought more books per person back then simply because it was a cheap and easy form of entertainment which we could spend our time on. It was more a part of our culture than it is now. People would talk about books in the same way that we now talk about TV shows, movies, and YouTube videos. But then we'd have to take into account the fact that there are simply more people who exist on the planet than there were 50 or 100 years ago. Substantially more. So even if it feels like less people read these days, I would argue book sales might even be up in overall volume. There's also the explanation that while book sales might be up, we still aren't reading because these books are slowly becoming decorations more than actual media that we engage with. Just like a vinyl record, physical books are becoming something of a thing you buy to look cultured and intelligent. Now, that sounds radicalizing. It sounds almost cynical, and it sounds like we're just getting dumber. What is the point of a book if you never actually open it up to read it? Why are we buying things just to look smarter and more cultured? And the answer is because we always have and we always will. This trend isn't anything new for human beings. We've always had and enjoyed collecting antiques or romanticizing the past. Perhaps we don't feel like people read much anymore simply because most people tend to stop reading after their 30s, mostly due to the fact that you're not in school anymore, and therefore you tend to find more stimulating forms of entertainment. We spend a lot less time on average reading than we have in our prior years, but that makes sense considering the easy access with which we have things like movies and TV shows and other forms of entertainment, like this YouTube video that you're watching right now. There's only so much time in the day, and most people choose to spend it watching something rather than reading something. Women are also the largest demographic of readers. They comprise about 80% of all book purchases, which is staggering and makes me really scared about my audience demographics and the book I will inevitably try to shill on this channel once it's published. Another thing that has me anxious about my own book and getting it published is the idea that traditional publishing companies don't really want to take a risk on a 250,000 word book with numerous sequel novels from an unproven author. For those who don't know, I intend to write a saga, which is to say that I don't really have a set number of books I want to add to this story that I'm writing. It's gonna be a long one, and it's gonna continue for however long I believe the story should continue. Couple that with the fact that I think it will likely be not just one saga, but several parallel sagas which occasionally overlap and intersect between each storyline, and suddenly I've lost the publisher. I don't think I'm good enough at writing to be an exception when it comes to a traditional publisher. I don't think my story is good enough to become a bestseller or any amount of the same level of fame that we might see from the Harry Potters or the Hunger Games or whatever other novel has gotten popular recently. My goal isn't and never has been to create something which makes me rich and famous. It would be nice, but that's not the goal. My goal is to write a book with a story that I enjoy and characters that I love to write about, which are wholly my own. However, I'm not satisfied with it just being done in a void. I want people to see it at the end of the day. I want people to engage with my story. I want people to purchase it and have a conversation about my book. I want people creating fan art about my stories, and I want people talking about how great those stories are. I don't want to be famous myself, but I want my story to be read by everyone who might enjoy reading it. And I'm sure a lot of writers and authors can sympathize with something like that. Anyways, I'm talking about all of this stuff because it's stuff that I think about regularly. I know the data, and I know all of the general intuition that I have about the current landscape for book publishing. I know all about the book talk trends and how they're being bought for purely aesthetic value when placed on a bookshelf. I know all about the different methodologies writers will try to use to build up their audiences and sell their latest works. I know the warnings, the advice, and the things authors wish they knew before they started writing. And yet, at the end of it all, I find myself not really knowing how to publish something for myself. Partly because I'm not quite ready to fully publish the book I'm making, but also partly because that information is not always readily available. Tracking down an answer for any of these lingering questions is difficult. I mean, do I just send it off to a publisher to look at? Do I have to get in contact with an agent? Do I self-publish? How do you even self-publish in a place like Kindle? If I were to self-publish, how do I get a physical copy of the book to sell to people? Should I make an audiobook, a website? Should I sell it on my channel? Would people even be willing to buy it at all? Unfortunately, these appear to be questions I'm going to have to learn through experience. They're going to have to be answered as I need them to be answered. And I suppose once that happens, that's when I'm going to be making a video about all of that to share everything that I learned. But for now, I'm just a writing hobbyist who doesn't really know how publishing works. And if anybody in the comments section has an easy way to explain how all of that stuff works, where to go and how to go about this stuff, I would be interested in learning. Either way, if you've made it this far into the video, please check out this video's sponsor once again. In a way, if I can successfully guide my audience to read another independent creator's books, I feel like it proves that one day my own book might get some traction too. I would also like to thank my channel members for their continued support. If you want to get invited to my private Discord, please hit the join button. And with that all being said, I look forward to seeing everyone here again, once I've figured out how to actually publish a book. Until then, stay safe, open up a document, and start writing.